Today we're going to be comparing the Cybex Priam and the Bugaboo Cameleon. These two strollers share a lot in common, not least because the Priam is one of a wide variety of strollers to come out after the pioneering efforts of the Cameleon and copy some of its original unique selling points, like a reversible seat, front swivel wheels, and an emphasis on folding and maintaining a light weight. These characteristics are the common standard now on the stroller market, but it's interesting to remember, at least I find it interesting, that in the early days of the Cameleon, the market looked quite different, and these elements were what set Bugaboo apart. History lesson aside, when you get past these initial similarities, there are actually quite a few differences in both functionality and especially mechanics between these models. I'd like to point out that the only available Cameleon that we had for this comparison was this used Cameleon 2. There are a few differences between the Cameleon 2 and 3, some things better, some things worse, but for the most part they are the same, and we'll point out any sort of relevant differences when we get to the mechanics of these strollers. Before I get into all that though, here are a few stats for these strollers. The Cameleon is a little heavier, weighing in at 9.6 kilos versus the Priam's 8 kilos. Folded down, they have virtually the same dimensions, with the Cameleon at 90 by 50 by 31 centimeters and the Priam at 95 by 58 by 31 centimeters. Likewise, they both carry virtually the same weight in the seat, 17 kilos, which is sort of standard. It means that you'll be able to use the seat up until you're done using a stroller. And in the shopping basket underneath, they're both a little bit on the light side, so the Cameleon can take 4 kilos versus the Priam's 5 kilos. We'll start out with a few notes on comfort, both for you and your child. The seats are roughly the same size, slightly more adjustable on the Priam. The bags are also about the same size, and the quality of the fabrics is about equal as well. There's a certain degree of padding, a certain degree of high quality fabrics, nice designs, and so on. Folding is a little bit more handy on the Priam because you are able to fold it with the seat itself on. It's not a big deal on the Cameleon, but you do have to take the frame off before you fold it down. That being said, it's quite easy also to fold down the Cameleon. Maintenance and textile removal are about the same on both of them. Both are very easy to remove the textiles. Both of them will require pretty much only a bit of spray lubrication in order to keep them running properly. Driving is a little bit more comfortable on the Priam because it has larger front wheels and it has a little bit of inbuilt suspension. It's not enough to be off-road capable, but it is better than the Cameleon, which really has no suspension. Okay, looking at the mechanics top to bottom on these strollers, I would note that the Cameleon has gone through over a decade of reforming itself, improving various mechanisms, whereas the Priam is of course only from 2015. That being said, in a lot of ways the Priam is actually a lot more sturdy. Starting with the handle adjustment mechanism is simpler on the Cameleon. It just involves opening these flaps and then adjusting the handle up and down. This is actually quite nice from a repair standpoint, as there's less things can go wrong. On the Priam, it has internal wires, which is okay as long as it's working properly, but it is one of those things that can fail because the wires have to be connected at various points at the top and the bottom, and these connections are usually plastic. When we get down to the central locking mechanism, and that's going to be the main point of difference in mechanics with these two strollers. So the Priam has been set up such that the fold is done where the back frame folds towards the front frame and the handle and the front frame remain on the same axis. What this means is that there's far less complexity and far less fragility inside the central locking mechanism than there is on the Cameleon. This impacts fold and use and accidents that can occur when you use too much weight on your stroller, and also the two-wheel function that Priam actually borrowed from Bugaboo. Cameleon was the original stroller to have a two-wheel function, but unfortunately because of a weak central locking mechanism, the two-wheel function is a little bit of a scary prospect for your stroller. It's one of those things that can damage that. Now, the central locking mechanism on the Bugaboo Cameleon, we've done a lot of videos on that, how to fix it, and the problems with it. You can check our channel if you like. It is a problem that has occurred with every generation, and in my opinion, it has gotten worse with every generation. Each time they switch out the size and shape of the parts, the same things are breaking, and then extra things are breaking. So for that reason, the central locking mechanism is actually a major minus point on the Cameleon itself. Looking at the back ends of these strollers, the first thing I would point out is that the Priam actually does have a dedicated suspension unit. Again, it's not enough for the Priam to really be a terrain stroller. It gets very rickety when you try to take it off any sort of pavement or smooth terrain, but of course so does the Cameleon, and at least there is some sort of suspension inbuilt into the Priam. So for a mid-sized stroller, it's okay suspension-wise. When it comes to the brakes, you have a little bit of a trade-off. So the Priam has this large brake pedal in the center, and several people have complained that there are problems with that brake pedal's positioning, because when you fill up the shopping basket, it tends to activate the brake. This can also happen when you're using the two-wheel function. In addition, the brake system runs these two pins out to the wheel, and the pins themselves are not made of the most sturdy material. It's a plastic tubing with a metal wire through the middle. So there are sometimes some problems with the brake system here. In addition, it's a little bit difficult to switch out any sort of parts on the Priam if things do break. There are not a lot of visible screws, and there is a lot of prying off of plastic caps and so on in order to get at any of the internal parts. Now the Cameleon, as we've said, Cameleon has gone through many different generations. It actually has a handbrake up at the top. It's a static handbrake. It's not a dynamic handbrake, but it's like on-off, and it will activate on both wheels. Now, this does necessitate using a wire, so wires are problems sometimes. They get rusty inside. You need to oil them, you need to lubricate them to keep them functioning properly. On the other hand, the brake system on the Cameleon is very easy to access, and they do sell parts, so if anything does go wrong, you can swap out the brakes more easily. Okay, looking at the front end, the first thing that I would point out again is the size of the front wheel. Having a larger front wheel counts for a lot in terms of drivability, in particular for getting over terrain. The front wheel on the Cameleon is very small, but it is sort of within the standard class for the medium class. So the larger front wheels on the Priam is one of the things that makes the Priam a little bit better for its medium class status in general. In terms of locking the front swivel wheels, the Priam has this kind of basic locking mechanism where a pin slides down into a hole in the fork. There are advantages and disadvantages to that. It's not the best or the worst system, but it functions okay. On the Cameleon, you actually have quite a strong locking mechanism. It's this large pad that will lock up under the back part of the front frame. It does necessitate locking the front wheels in a forward-facing position, which is a little bit suboptimal, but on the other hand, it is a stronger locking mechanism. The suspension on the front wheels is adjustable on the Cameleon, whereas it's not on the Priam, but really only want to have that suspension adjusted to its tightest possible position anyway. Taking these strengths and weaknesses into consideration, if you decided that your choice of stroller is between these two models, then my recommendation is to go with the Priam, as it is both more sturdy and more drivable than the Cameleon due to larger front wheels and better suspension. Sturdiness is the real clincher though, and with this I'm talking again about the central locking mechanism on the Cameleon. Until they shift this out, I honestly wouldn't recommend a Cameleon to anybody. That being said, if you're willing to look beyond these two models, then there are several other strollers that I would choose instead. Number one in the midsize actually being another model from Bugaboo, the Fox. In addition, if this is your first stroller, or you're looking for a wider overview of the market, trying to find the stroller that will truly best fit your needs, then I would recommend watching another video we put out recently, entitled A Comprehensive Guide to Choosing the Right Stroller for Your Lifestyle. There may be some factors that you're not considering that landed you here in this comparison video in the first place, which are better dealt with in that video. In any case though, we hope that you found this video useful, and if you have, we ask that you subscribe as it helps continue making videos in the future.